Hi, thank you, Ben. My name is Rahan. I recently was tasked to be a health policy analyst for the Progressive Conservative Party in regards to health policy. I was wondering if you'd be willing to take a health policy question.
Sure.
So I define myself as a classical liberal. I believe in smaller government. I believe in individual freedom and personal responsibility. When I'm researching health issues, I noticed that a single-payer healthcare system is much more efficient than privatized systems. For example, so when I've been researching health policy issues, I've noticed that single-payer systems, such as, for example, in Canada, in countries like the UK, in Sweden, that they actually cost less, they provide greater access. My question is, how could we implement free market principles into a healthcare system? Do we have to go down the route that the US has gone, where we have a system where the administrative costs of the US healthcare system are 346% more than the Canadian healthcare system?
No. I mean, there's an enormous number of regulations in place in the United States that drive those costs up. So to understand the roots of the American healthcare system, you have to understand that health insurance did not used to be linked to employment. So the vast majority of people in the United States get their health insurance through their employer. Their employer actually buys their health insurance for them. That was because the federal government during World War II and a little bit after actually regulated wages. So that meant that employers who wanted to give their employees raises couldn't give them more money, so instead they gave them health insurance. And then the government began incentivizing employers to do this. So what that meant is there's actually a pretty wide gap in the United States between people who are happy with their health insurance, namely people who are employed, and people who are not employed and have to buy in the individual markets. Obamacare tried to kind of create a mandate that was going to supposedly drive healthy people to buy, and that would take care of the sick people. But the problem is that number one, the mandate was not high enough if you're going to do that. And number two, it's violative of basic rights to force people to buy something that they don't want to buy. So the best way to think about healthcare is that there are three things you can look for in any healthcare system. There's universality, there's affordability, and there's quality. Right? You can have two of those three, but not all three. There's no way to have all three. You can't have affordability and universality and quality. So in the United States, the 5-year cancer survival rate is a lot higher than it is in Canada or in Sweden or in Denmark. The vast majority of medical patents still come out of the United States. And that's because of a profit-based system. So how do you get all that and then also get low cost? Well, it's pretty easy, actually, to get low cost, but you're not going to get universality. There's still going to always be this group of people who don't think ahead enough, and this is really the problem with the healthcare system. There's a group of people who don't think ahead enough to actually buy healthcare when they are young and healthy. They wait until they're old, and then they have a pre-existing condition, and they can't get healthcare because insurance companies insure against risk. They don't give you money for a risk that has already materialized. So my basic answer is that if you were to deregulate the healthcare system almost entirely in the United States, give tax credits for the individual provision of healthcare as opposed to through your employer, and then get rid of the restrictions about not selling insurance across state lines, allow people to sell all types of insurance plans, then just like in every other area of capitalism, you would see an increase in quality and a decrease in price. Because this happens with every other product. Treating healthcare as a right and not a product has actually driven up price and driven down quality, as opposed to treating it as a product.
When we talk about how, for example, you said there are three pillars: affordability, accessibility, and quality. One question I had is about collective bargaining. In a single-payer system, for example, drugs, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be healthcare services, they can be collectively bargained. The issue that I'm seeing with systems that don't have that is that what ends up happening is that individuals now buy health insurance from a corporation. Those corporations are now competing with each other. This removes any incentive for collective bargaining. And the fact of the matter is that when individuals are purchasing healthcare services individually, they simply cannot get the same price that other countries who are purchasing collectively, such as Canada, and we're seeing a huge problem in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the problems with this is a deeper problem in the United States and in Western civilization generally, is the lack of social institutions outside government. So it used to be that you would get your insurance basically through your church group or through your synagogue group. You'd collectively bargain with the people in your community, and then you would go to, and they still have these co-ops in the United States, and you collectively bargain with the insurance companies. Again, there's two things that you're trying to do. One is provide for the sick and elderly, and the second is not to create the moral hazard of not encouraging people who are young to go out and buy. So when you have these government fallback positions, what you actually end up doing is creating a subsidy for the insurance companies that end up driving the prices up. And then if you're in the private sector, then you're still paying those high prices, and you have to collectively bargain in order to drive them back down. It's really complicated and really heavily regulated, and I fail to see other than the sort of general argument that you don't want to see sick people uninsured, which is a fine argument, but calls for charity, not necessarily government intervention. Other than that argument, I fail to see how healthcare is not a product. Declaring things a right doesn't make them so. Right? South Africa declares healthcare a right, and no one has healthcare in South Africa because it's a kind of crappy country. So, sorry, there's a whole line of people behind you, but I appreciate it.